Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to a world where money, borders, and politicians have completely vanished. Just poof, gone.
Right, like completely wiped off the map.
Exactly. But not just that. What if you walked outside and realized that laws, marriages, and even the traditional family unit were entirely gone too?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no bank accounts, no passports, no wedding rings, no legal codes.
I mean, it sounds like the setup for a post-apocalyptic survival scenario.
Yeah.
Where everyone is trading bottle caps and scavenging for canned goods.
It totally does. It sounds like the ultimate chaos. But the source material we are diving into today argues the exact opposite.
Yeah, it really flips that whole idea on its head.
It does. It posits that this scenario, the complete and utter erasure of everything we consider foundational to civilization, is actually the only way humanity can survive and thrive long term.
It's a massive claim.
Huge. So today we are looking at an excerpt from a March 2024 essay. It's titled The Future of Humanity, Zhuofeng-Style Communism. And it's written by an author named Tuefeng.
Right.
And our mission for this deep dive is to thoroughly unpack this incredibly radical social blueprint. And we're going to examine the author's rather shocking claim that a working prototype of this society already exists.
Which is just wild to think about. I mean, it is a document that essentially takes a sledgehammer to the bedrock of modern sociology.
Seriously?
It challenges the fundamental assumptions we make about why humans organize themselves the way they do.
Now, real quick, before we jump in, I want to make something crystal clear to you, the listener. We are not endorsing or taking sides on the political, social, or philosophical viewpoints presented in this text.
Yeah, definitely not.
Right. The goal of this deep dive is simply to objectively explore and understand the fascinating ideas and arguments contained in this original source material. We are here to analyze the blueprint, not sell you the house.
Well said.
So, with that in mind, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the author's fundamental diagnosis of the human condition. Why does Tuefeng believe our current system is just, irreparably broken?
Well, to understand the cure being proposed, we first need to examine the author's view of the disease.
Right.
And the text takes this massive, sweeping look at human history over the past 5,000 years. And across the board, whether you look at Europe, Africa, Asia, the Americas, Oceania, the author identifies a consistent, grim, recurring theme.
Which is basically war, hunger, disease, turmoil, and natural disasters.
Exactly.
The text is very explicit about it. It claims that no nation and no individual has ever lived a life truly filled with continuous joy, happiness, freedom, and bliss.
Yeah, the historical record, as presented here, is essentially a 5,000-year track record of systemic misery.
It's pretty bleak.
It is. But here is the critical pivot in the essay's logic. We have historically justified the creation of massive institutions, nations, religions, political parties, financial systems, as tools to solve these exact problems.
Right, like the standard narrative is that we create nations for physical security, religions for moral guidance, political parties for governance.
And money to efficiently distribute resources.
Exactly. But Tuefeng's core argument is that these institutions have completely failed to solve human suffering. And it's actually worse than failure.
Yeah, the text argues they increase the burden.
Right. They are the actual source of the friction. It's like humanity has been dealing with a terrible chronic illness for 5,000 years, and we've been trying to treat it with these heavy, intense medicines.
Like money, borders, laws.
Yes. And the author is looking at the medical chart and concluding that these medicines aren't just failing to cure the illness. The toxic side effects of the medication are what's actively destroying the patient.
That's a great way to put it. And framing it as toxic medicine explains why this diagnosis matters so much to the rest of the text.
How so?
Because it sets up a premise where reform is structurally impossible. Like if a system is just flawed, you patch it, you pass a new law, you elect a new leader, you adjust interest
We
rates.
tweak the dosage.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you believe the pillars of society themselves are the root cause of the suffering, tweaking the dosage of a poison won't save you. Right. The only logical conclusion is the total eradication of those pillars.
So if the medicine is the poison,
Mm-hmm.
the logical extreme is to stop taking the medicine entirely.
Precisely.
And Tuefeng doesn't just want to reform these institutions. He calls for a complete scorched earth eradication. And honestly, reading the actual list of what must disappear is jolting.
It really is.
The text states that nations must disappear, religions must vanish, political parties must cease, money must be eliminated, and power must be eradicated.
And it doesn't stop at macro-level governance either.
Right.
The text moves straight into the micro-level, targeting societal structures that we usually consider basic human nature.
Like what?
Marriages, traditional families, constitutions, laws, and regulations. They're also entirely on the chopping block.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Eradicating laws, constitutions, and family units.
Yep.
Because as a reader, my immediate reaction is that without those guardrails, society would instantly collapse into chaos.
Sure, that's the natural assumption.
Right. The obvious fear is a rapid regression back to living in caves or violently defending our own little tribal territories.
Well, the author actually anticipates that exact fear. The text explicitly addresses the question of whether humanity will revert to a primitive era, or tribal times, or city-states.
And what's the answer?
A resounding no. And the reasoning given is that humanity's collective evolution prevents it.
Interesting.
The text argues that our overall cognitive level has risen, technology has advanced, our thinking has become far more dynamic, and our knowledge and wisdom have reached unprecedented levels.
Wait, higher cognitive level? I mean, we have highly advanced technology today, but people still steal cars, hoard wealth, and commit fraud.
True.
Advancing cognitively doesn't automatically delete the human survival instinct. Like, we might be smarter, but we still lock our doors at night.
Right.
So how does the text bridge that massive gap in logic? How does being smart replace a legal system?
Well, the author attempts to bridge that gap by pointing to shifting social values as proof of this cognitive evolution. The text draws a very specific, revealing parallel here.
Okay.
Sweefing argues that people no longer wish to regress to the past in a broad societal sense, just as an increasing number of individuals are reluctant to enter what the text calls marital and familial hardships.
Oh, wow. So the author is taking a modern social trend, the global decline in traditional marriage rates and birth rates, and using it as evidence of a broader evolutionary step.
Exactly.
The argument seems to be that people are realizing they don't need the rigid, often difficult confines of a traditional marriage to live a fulfilled life.
Yeah, the author views that reluctance not as societal decay, but as liberation.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. If humanity is outgrowing the need for the microstructure of the traditional family unit because we've evolved past its utility, the text assumes we are simultaneously outgrowing the need for the macrostructures of the state, the law, and the economy.
But, I mean, if advanced knowledge and unprecedented wisdom are supposed to replace rigid rules and traditional constraints, something still has to hold the center.
Right.
Because if society isn't collapsing into primitive tribalism and there are no laws telling me I can't take my neighbor's food, something has to be functioning in the background to prevent collapse.
And the author provides a name for this proposed alternative framework.
Okay, what is it?
It's called the era of Lifechanyuan, which is also referred to as Sueving-style communism or the kingdom of the greatest creator.
The era of Lifechanyuan.
Yes. In this era, the social contract isn't based on a constitution or a legal code. Instead, individuals adhere to a set of guiding values for their conduct.
The text describes an economic and social reality where resources are shared worldwide, and it uses a very specific phrase. It says, people possess nothing yet own everything.
Yes, that phrase is key.
Individuals act unselfishly and selflessly to create what the author calls the most magnificent symphony of life.
It's very poetic.
It is. It's essentially applying an open source framework, like the Linux operating system, to physical reality. The collective contributes unselfishly to maintain the system, not for a salary, but based on shared ideological values.
What's fascinating here is that paradox of possessing nothing, yet owning everything.
Yeah, unpack that for us.
It represents a monumental philosophical shift from individual ownership to global stewardship. In the system of individual ownership, you hold the deed to a house. It is exclusively yours, and you physically exclude others from utilizing it.
Right.
But in this proposed era, you don't possess the title to the house, but you have guaranteed access to shelter, food, and resources. You own it purely in the sense that it is part of the shared human inheritance.
Okay, but open source works incredibly well for something like Wikipedia because information has zero replication cost.
True.
Multiple people can read a digital article at the same time without diminishing it. But a tomato takes land, water, and time to grow.
Right, you can't just copy-paste a tomato.
Exactly. Two people cannot eat the same tomato. So how does Yufeng's model account for physical scarcity without money to ration it or laws to distribute it?
The text suggests that the combination of advanced technology and unselfish human contribution solves the scarcity problem entirely.
Brr.
Yeah. When you strip away the profit motive, the planned obsolescence, and the artificial scarcity created by markets, the author argues that the Earth, coupled with human labor, produces more than enough to satisfy everyone's actual needs.
So the shortage is basically artificial.
Exactly. The friction only occurs because our current systems encourage hoarding. If individuals act selflessly, only taking what they need and contributing their labor freely, the physical constraints of a tomato, to use your example, are managed by collective abundance rather than monetary rationing.
I mean, it is one thing to write a beautifully theoretical manifesto about an open-source, lawless utopia driven by unselfish tomato farmers.
Right.
It is entirely another thing to claim that this model actually works in the real world with actual human beings.
Oh, for sure. But the text doesn't just present this as a pipe dream. It confronts the skepticism head on.
It does. It addresses the immediate assumption that this is just, fantasy utopian communism.
Right. And to dismantle that skepticism, Swifting first lays down a metaphysical foundation.
Okay.
The text claims that all material phenomena are the direct outcomes of consciousness, stating that the essence of the world lies in formless manifestations.
So the author's saying that our physical reality, our cities, our wars, our poverty, our legal systems, is just a physical reflection of our collective internal state.
Exactly.
So if you fundamentally change human consciousness, the physical reality automatically transforms to match it.
Yes, the external world is viewed purely as a mirror of the internal world. But, and this is crucial, the author clearly recognizes that abstract metaphysical philosophy isn't enough to convince a highly skeptical public.
Right, you need receipts.
Exactly. Therefore, the text presents concrete proof of this altered consciousness creating a new physical reality, a working prototype called the second home.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The text describes the second home as a new model of human production and life. And the timeline here is just wild.
It really is.
It claims that this practical activity of Lifechanyuan actually started back in April 2009.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That means, as of the writing of this essay in 2024, it has been successfully running for 15 years.
Which is incredible for any intentional community.
And the author emphasizes that it's not some hidden, isolated cult out in the woods. The text points out that there is a wealth of information available online, abundant textual, visual, and video descriptions documenting this prototype in action.
And having an active 15-year prototype entirely shifts the nature of this document.
It really does.
It transitions from a theoretical manifesto to a field report. We are forced to consider the actual mechanics of what it takes to maintain an intentional community for over a decade.
Because usually they fall apart fast.
Right. Most utopian experiments fracture within a few years over resource distribution, interpersonal conflict, or power struggles.
So let's talk about those mechanics. Because a 15-year stress test of a society without money, formal laws, or traditional marriage is a massive claim.
It's huge.
If they aren't using money, how do they handle labor? Like, who cleans the bathrooms? If they don't have marriage or traditional family units, how are social bonds maintained?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. The text implies that this is all managed through that shared consciousness, but the logistical reality of keeping the lights on without a paycheck is staggering.
Well, the implication is that labor in the second home is entirely voluntary and driven by a shared commitment to the community's values rather than financial coercion.
Okay.
In a typical society, we use money to incentivize unpleasant labor. But in the second home model, the premise is that the purified consciousness of the members eliminates the laziness or ego that usually requires monetary motivation.
So they just do it because it needs to be done.
Exactly. They clean the bathrooms because the community needs clean bathrooms, and the ego that says that work is beneath me has supposedly been eradicated.
Which immediately brings up the biggest question of all for me.
What's that?
If this second home has successfully solved resource distribution and human harmony without money or laws, and it's been running smoothly for a decade and a half, why hasn't it scaled?
Right.
Why isn't the whole world living this way right now? If there is online video proof of a perfect society, why are we all still paying rent?
Well, the author provides a very clear answer to that, which brings us to the ultimate hurdle of this entire blueprint.
Okay, what is it?
Transitioning to the era of Lifechanyuan isn't a simple matter of moving to a new geographic location, burning your passport, or throwing away your wallet.
Yeah.
The physical logistics are actually the easy part.
The text explicitly states that entering this lifestyle requires what it calls a profound spiritual purification.
Yes.
It acknowledges this is a monumental and challenging undertaking for humanity, and the core task is something Suifeng calls constructing the human soul garden.
And while human soul garden is a highly poetic term, the actual psychological work it demands is incredibly brutal.
It sounds exhausting. The text gives a specific, daunting list of the weeds that need to be permanently pulled from this garden.
Right.
It says we must completely uproot negative and pessimistic psychological and emotional elements. And the specific list includes greed, jealousy, comparison, selfishness, laziness, complaints, hatred, and ego.
Every single one.
Every single one of those traits has to be entirely uprooted from the human heart before you can enter this new era.
Let's connect this back to the macro institutions we discussed at the very beginning. The laws, the financial systems, the borders. Why do those institutions exist in the first place? From a sociological standpoint, they are artificial guardrails built specifically to manage these exact human flaws.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we have criminal codes and police forces because humans display greed and selfishness. We have binding legal contracts because humans are naturally untrustworthy and driven by ego. We have borders and militaries because of fear and hatred of the other.
So the author's logic is mathematically sound, even if the application is terrifying. If you can truly, completely uproot the flaws, if absolutely no one on Earth is greedy, selfish, or lazy, then the massive institutions designed to manage those flaws instantly become obsolete.
Right. You don't need a lock on the door if the desire to steal has been completely deleted from the human operating system.
The institutions are just software patches for our flawed human code.
That's a perfect analogy. Remove the flaw, and you can delete the patch. But achieving that purification is the bottleneck here.
Because it's so hard.
Exactly.
Oh.
The hardware for this new society, the shared resources, the communal living, the agricultural output, is theoretically ready. And the text claims the second home proves the hardware functions.
But humanity's current software, our consciousness, which is heavily laden with ego, jealousy, and greed, is incompatible with the new system.
Precisely. Until the software is globally upgraded through this spiritual purification, the Lifechanyuan model just cannot scale.
Let's actually think about the reality of uprooting those flaws, because what does a society without comparison even look like?
It's hard to even imagine.
Without comparison, concepts like fashion, luxury goods, and career ambition completely evaporate. I mean, the entire engine of modern capitalism runs on the high-octane fuel of comparing yourself to your neighbor.
Oh, absolutely. You buy the nicer car because you compare it to the older one.
Yeah.
You want the promotion for the status.
Right. And Swifting is proposing we dismantle the engine by permanently removing the fuel.
It is a fundamental rewiring of basic human nature. If you remove the ego, you remove the drive for individual legacy. If you remove complaints, you demand a level of stoicism that is almost superhuman.
Seriously?
The text doesn't shy away from how difficult this is. It admits it's a monumental undertaking. It essentially requires individuals to voluntarily undergo a psychological death of their current identity.
Just imagine trying to completely delete comparison from your own brain. Like scrolling through social media or seeing a coworker get a raise and having absolutely zero biological instinct to compare your standing to theirs.
It feels impossible.
Or trying to entirely uproot complaints. I mean, the author isn't just asking for an economic revolution or a political regime change. This is an evolutionary demand.
Which totally explains why the 15-year prototype remains a prototype.
Yeah.
It's relatively easy to find a small group of highly dedicated, philosophically aligned individuals willing to undergo that spiritual purification for an intentional community.
Right, a small group.
But it is an entirely different challenge to scale that psychological rewiring to 8 billion people across wildly different cultures and environments.
So let's take a step back and look at the whole picture we've explored today.
Okay.
Shuofeng's vision diagnoses the totality of human suffering over the past 5,000 years as the direct, inescapable result of our most basic societal structures, our nations, our financial systems, our laws.
Yes.
The proposed solution is a radical, values-driven communal life, the era of Lifechanyuan, where we abandon individual ownership and legal codes, possessing nothing yet owning everything. And the author points to a second home prototype that has supposedly been operating successfully for 15 years, arguing that the only thing preventing a global utopia is our own toxic psychology.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. The blueprint requires humanity to first overcome the ultimate hurdle, spiritually purifying our own minds of ego, greed, and the instinct to compare.
It is a sweeping, staggering vision of what humanity could potentially become. It demands that we aggressively question the very foundations of how we organize our external lives and our internal worlds.
Basically asking us if our institutions are keeping us safe or keeping us trapped.
Exactly.
As a quick reminder to you listening, our deep dive today was solely to examine and unpack these complex, revolutionary concepts presented in the text. We aren't endorsing the eradication of laws or the Lifechanyuan model.
No, definitely not.
We are just the tour guides helping you navigate the material.
And as we end this tour, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to mull over. The text demands the complete, permanent uprooting of deeply ingrained traits like jealousy, laziness, and the need to possess. Think about your own mind as that soul garden.
Okay.
If you were to successfully uproot just one of those weeds tomorrow, let's say, the habit of comparison, how would your daily life actually change?
Oh, wow.
How would your interactions at work, your relationship with your finances, or the way you connect with your family shift if the instinct to measure yourself against others was simply gone?
That is a really profound question. It really forces you to realize that before the borders of a nation can ever vanish, the borders and barriers inside our own heads might have to vanish first.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the unknown. Stay curious, keep questioning the world around you, and we will catch you on the next one.